Hello and welcome all to the third day of EPIC Global Education and Skill Conclave. Now, I have a very special guest with us who is Dr. S.S. Mantha. He is the former chairman AICTE and currently the chancellor of KL University. Thank you so much, Dr. S.S. Mantha, for joining us on a very important panel and to give away a very important message and a presentation on the topic that is other side of online education. It will be a very interesting one. I hand over the session to you, Dr. S.S. Mantha. Over to you.
Thank you, Gopi, Arora, and all the other uh, friends and invited guests. Now, uh, thank you for having me on the show. Online blended and hybrid education is in the news. Hence, we must understand the different facets of it. I'll speak to you today on those facets and the other side of online education. Friends, there are almost 35 million students enrolled in the higher education system in the country, contributing to a small gross enrollment ratio of about 26. India has about 65% of its population below the age of 35, which simply means that there are at least four times as many who could have gone to colleges but did not. Is it feasible to build more brick and mortar units to accommodate them? They may have not gone for various reasons. Will they attend colleges even if they were to be built? A simple answer is no, for they either do not have the wherewithal or the money to do so. They may not have the money to get into the higher education colleges, or they may not have interest in the current education system as it is being meted out. Their need to work for a living overrides every other need, which means financial conditions have to improve. Now, the aspirational supply chain seeks better educated and skilled personnel. Hence, upskilling, reskilling, both are important. What then is the way out? Online education and blended learning may provide some answers. However, COVID 19 has complicated even that storyline by displacing even the college goers from the perch. We now are left fending for both the college goers and the distance learners. Crises such as the current pandemic must make us introspect if our policies were right and actually sustainable. Online or blended learning has answers to at least some questions. Several institutions have subscribed to online platforms, as we have seen in the last couple of months, a couple of years. Wherever the content is interactive, intuitive, and interesting, students have largely taken to it, but not all of them. Many students are struggling to connect in districts large and small. What would the students living in remote areas unserved by internet providers do? Many students and their parents are dropping out of touch with the institutions completely, unavailable by phone, email, or any other form of communication. Online learning can present new obstacles, particularly when with uneven levels of technology and adult supervision. The reasons are many and revealing by the day as we try finding our way through the pandemic. The pandemic itself has been going up and down, and therefore we are constantly revisiting and changing our response to the pandemic. Chronic absenteeism is a problem in our colleges, even during the best of times. But now, with almost every college or university in the country closed or partly open, and lessons being conducted remotely, more students than ever are missing class, not logging on, not checking in, or not completing assignments. The absence rate appears particularly high in institutions with many low income students whose access to home computers and the internet connections are poor. What does one do when some teachers report that fewer than half of their students are regularly participating? Will we end up having more summer sessions, a delayed start in the new term, or perhaps having some or even all students come back to classrooms to complete the unfinished semesters once they are able to return to classrooms? To maintain social distancing, we will need to bring students back to institutions in waves in order to reduce the number of people inside classrooms and buildings at any given time. Many skills actually build one on the other. So we must look at all these facets in order to make the online education worth its time. Will we need some kind of beginning of the year diagnostics to try and figure out just where the students are or how much they have lost? A lot of our students and siblings, they have to take care of, and their parents may still be going out and working. Scholarships and other funding are typically tied to student enrollment or attendance counts across the country, both at the undergraduate and postgraduate classes. Many institutions may have to make efforts to distribute digital devices to students who do not have their own at home. The governments may have to pitch in by distributing mobile devices for distance learning, smartphones to serve as home Wi Fi hotspots. Further, many rules and regulations may have to be tweaked for all this to happen. There are many other value added services. Online education too needs faculty to handhold and subscription to content that can engage an unattended student for the entire period and a set of different value added services. The emotional connect that we find inside a classroom is completely missing in the online education. And we must try and engage the other side in an asynchronous medium. And that's the difficult part. Blended learning will have expenses incurred due to laboratories, workshops, etc. In fact, as time progresses, a mix of online and blended in probably a ratio of 30-70 may work. But it's all work in progress. People will have to find out what is the best mix. But then how does one do the costing of such arrangements? Because costing will become one of the important factors in future times. An interesting case that this pandemic has thrown at us is worth debating. A number of class action suits have been filed against colleges and universities in the US, with class members typically defined as any enrolled student who has paid for tuition, room and board, and other costs. Many students seek reimbursement for housing, dining, and on campus services. Other lawsuits are requesting tuition refunds on the basis that remote learning is a lesser form of education. Currently, at least 250 universities and colleges are facing lawsuits that call into question the value of online education. Besides, the class action suits also ask if the degree awarded through online learning will have the same value as the one that is awarded through face to face learning, and if it would adversely affect their placements. It is another matter that the universities won when the cases were heard this February and were dismissed for lack of evidential value. But believe me, these kind of cases will increase in times to come unless we build that quality quotient into all that we are doing in online, blended, hybrid learning. Coming to the fee to be charged, many universities in the West and Europe actually base the fees charged on the credits earned rather than on any other factor. Established in 1906, a Carnegie unit is the measure of the amount of time a student studies the subject. Hence, 1 credit hour refers to 1 hour of contact time between the teacher and the student. Typically, a course may have 3 to 4 credits. 1 credit hour being 1 hour of classroom teaching. Now, to find the tuition fees, to estimate the tuition fees, all that one needs to know is the total credit hours required to complete the degree and multiply by the credit cost. Will then credits earned face to face or online be different even if they lead to the same degree? Will they have to be charged differently then? How does the costing vary if a credit were to have a blended content? Pandemic or no pandemic, blended learning must be the future, for it makes a permanent record of thinking and therefore offers an opportunity for reflection and increased awareness of the inquiry process itself. As you all know, even the UGC has mandated about 40% of the content, even in the regular programs, to be done online. Merely saying something to be conducted online is not the solution. You need to find out ways of effectively delivering that online content. The digital divide, however, cannot derail this growth story. Apart from the technology, good content is the heart of any virtual mode. One solution is to aggregate good teaching content and provide an immersive experience by appropriate handholding. Good teachers with domain expertise, presentation skills, and access to effective technology create good content. Can a system as large as 1,000 universities and 45,000 colleges ever dream of doing this? Is it really feasible? The answer lies in collaboration of a different kind. Now, two instances stand out. Firstly, identified faculty in various disciplines must be facilitated to create content. Faculty in physics from IIT Delhi or faculty in mathematics from Presidency College in Chennai, can they all come together creating an experience to cherish? They can create content which can then be ported across the platforms. A new Department of Content Management or DOCM under the Ministry of Education could possibly handhold. This is my suggestion. The necessary state of art technology, recording centers, videography centers, could be established in each of the district headquarters to provide the technology support. Such content, when ported on a common learning management system, LMS, or a customized Moodle, ported on a multi-tenant architecture, multi-instanced, white-labeled, and maintained by that DOCM that I'm talking about, could be beamed to all students across the country, or at least to those who are left out of such learning systems. Such a DOCM, notional of course at this point of time, can even address the digital divide. Availability of devices and bandwidth in certain areas is far from satisfactory, as we have found during the pandemic. Services of BSNL, NIC, and other agencies can come in handy. They have established huge networks, the last mile going right up to the many cooperative societies and villages. Sanitized mobile vans with PCs and smart devices and access points to all remote locations, or have no PCs or smart, you know, smartphones must be made available. The smartphones and such smart devices must be made available. They come at a cost, but the CSR initiatives and the government funding, they can come together to make that available. If a maximum throughput and minimal interference is required for conduct of nationwide teaching or even conducting examinations, channels 1, 6, and 11 in the 2.4 gigahertz ISM band are the best choices. The government can, make them available, at least during certain time of the day, so that the teaching learning process can take place, or even the recorded versions can be played on the network. Cable TV network is another choice. their providers, their network providers must be, casual to provide education content during certain hours of the day. So sanitized mobile vans where classrooms go to students and not students coming to classrooms, your DTH channels, your ISM band, your cable TV network, they all can be effectively utilized to overcome the problems that we have in reaching the unreached. Another way to get good content, apart from getting our teachers to generate that, is to aggregate third party content like that of edX, Coursera or Udemy or any similar in various disciplines, subscribed by again that DOCM that I'm talking about and ported on the common learning management system. Advantage is low cost to the student. It's unthinkable that all those thousands of colleges and universities will ever individually subscribe to this content, which comes at a price, or invest in effective digital infrastructure. There's a lot of brick and mortar days are probably gone. Institutions will need to invest in digital infrastructure, but that again costs the student. And if it is done individually by every institution across the country, it's it's probably a waste of resources, waste of time, and waste of effort. The Conversely, all that can be brought onto a common platform and made available to students at a cost that's probably a fraction of what it would otherwise cost. A collateral advantage of such a partnership is that the multi-point entry exit option, accumulation of credits, credit bank concept, designing one's own degree or diploma, provided for in the national education policy, they all become meaningful and realizable. Physical entities of our institutions, universities, would still remain in the physical domain. What will be created will be a synergetic virtual university where all of them can collaborate in multiple ways. A 50 GER envisaged in the next 15 years may even be realized in the next 5 years. One can even aggregate similar research, thereby optimizing the funding options. Can we then collaborate to create a virtual world of learning? The pandemic has shown us the way. Are we game now? Thank you. You are muted, sir. You are muted, Rajneesh.
Uh, Thank you, sir, for that inspiring session where you talked about the synergetic virtual universities and the collaboration model, and also some of these initiatives that you talked about. And I'm sure many of the stake educators and stakeholders in education who are watching this will be encouraged to emulate the innovations you talked about in their real life. Thank you. So that was Dr. S.S. Mantha, former chairman AICT and chairman of KL University. There, thanks, Dr. Mantha, for
Thank you.
that inspiring talk. Have a good day. Thank you.